There it is. There's a record button.
We're recording.
What's up, everybody?
Hey, it's the Broadcast Braddahs. I'm Justin Faisongo. This is Jonah Holova, and welcome to an episode. We have a very special guest today, and we are tying together
How far is he away?
5,500 miles away.
It's pretty far. He's our first international guest.
Yeah.
We've had some international guests that traveled to California
to us,
to talk with us at the table. But today we're taking a trip across the Pacific.
Yep, which is super exciting. First off, let's thank Margin for the Broadcast Braddahs hats. And if you want a hat or want to check availability of a hat, email myself at it's justin@broadcastbraddahs.com or email Joe at broadcastbraddahs.com. We'll be more than happy to help you out get a hat. I have flat rate UPS boxes available. We can pack them, ship them, and I'll work with you on the shipping and all that fun stuff. So thank you, Frank and Margin, for sending us hats to support the channel. Appreciate it.
Help us share the stoke.
Share the stoke. Okay, so we're gonna get right to it here. Calling in from 5,500 miles away is somebody that's super important to the sport. Especially growing the sport where he's at, and the premier paddler out of Japan, Kenzo Kaneko. Welcome for the second time, even though no one needs to really know.
Even though now they know.
I know, but I'll say it.
Yeah.
We started this episode, and I forgot to confirm the recording cue, and we talked for about 20 minutes and didn't record any of it. I'm sorry.
No worries. Thank you guys for having me again.
Like you said, Kenny, I think that's par for the course for the Broadcast Braddahs. We do our best, and we're trying to do it, low budget and all that fun stuff. So, kind of wrap our head around what we're doing here. This conversation is coming to us primarily because Joe and I and a couple of people from our canoe club had talked about coming to Japan to see a race and participate in a race, or even broadcast a race at some point in time. And this was one that fell on us a few months back. A couple of paddlers that paddle for me, Tim Ono and Hisano Sato Tazen, have planned it. They are coming out to race in the 2024 VAA Japan National Championships. And Joe is on the fence with that. So, I know there's been some conversations with you guys back and forth. And so,
1 more week, we'll confirm. 1 more week.
Yeah. But really, really stoked for you to join us today. Kenny, I know it's you're a long ways away from us and a day ahead. And so we're thankful for your time. And so appreciate you being here with us today.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. Second time around, it allowed me to put a hat on because you guys both had hats on.
Oh yeah.
I only wear a hat because I'm bald and I just get this glare off the top of my head that no one likes. That's what happens.
Yeah.
So Kenny, you have a paddle shop there in Japan.
Yeah.
And it is a full. You have stand-up paddleboard, outrigger canoe. I know you have gear and equipment and all kinds of really cool stuff. Can you tell us a little about the inception of that and how you put that together?
Yeah. So again, thank you guys for having me. And the shop came around like right in the midst of COVID, 2020, and a part of that was because up until 2019, I was racing stand-up professionally. Doing races in Hawaii or Europe and kind of just busy with that. But with COVID, it had time for me to not travel and stay at home. And I had my second daughter, and I thought, I was getting to an age 33 or 32 or something. I really wanted to get grounded in Japan and try and grow the sport of paddling, not necessarily just stand up or outrigger, just paddling in general. Because I think Japan is, Scott, one of the best. We're an island surrounded by the ocean, and we have a lot of lakes. So I think paddling is, um, I think it's one of the sports that isn't major, but it can be here, And
That's awesome.
there's no storefronts for like stand-up paddling or outriggers in Japan. So I was like, heck, like why don't we start something here? And it's been 3.5 years and it's been going pretty well. So yeah.
Just like anything else, you find the need and you fill it. And what's pretty cool about that is that I think we were talking about participation in the paddling sports there in Japan, and I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but let's talk about participation in stand-up races or just stand-up overall, and your
Yeah.
participation you guys expect in the 2024 Japan National Championships.
Yeah. So I know stand-up paddling racing has faded a lot in, Southern California
Worldwide.
or
Mm.
in,
Yeah.
actually it's very big in Europe
Being
right now.
Europe. Yeah, it's being Europe, but yeah,
Super big,
that's
but
it. Yeah.
I think in Hawaii, like I have two unlimited stand-up paddle boards over there that I raced in the channel. Each of them cost like 3 grand, but I'm having a hard time giving them away.
Mm.
So that's kind of how it's going. But in Japan, there's still a big community of paddlers because one, it's one of the easiest paddle sports to get into, and people are just stoked on getting on the water.
Mhm.
And so we have races, I think from May to October, a race every weekend somewhere in Japan. And you can expect at least 100 people and at most, 300, 350 people.
So
So,
while we're talking about it, can we talk about your line of boards and paddles that you have?
yeah, so I started Kokua along with Paddler, the shop, and the story behind the name Paddler is very explanatory. I didn't want it to be like a stand-up paddle shop or like a canoe shop.
Yeah, you don't
I
want to
wanted to
cubbyhole yourselves. Yep.
I wanted to be somewhere that anyone that's interested in paddler or becoming a paddler can just come to, and we can guide you through it. Whether they want to paddle stand-up or outrigger or six-man or join a club somewhere. And at the same time, I started Kokua because I always had contracts with different brands during my, stand-up racing career. And I never found gear that was catered to my stature, height and weight. And I knew that there was a need for a board brand that's catered to the Asian, you know, like community, like people under 5'5", 5'4". There's not many people like that, overseas. So that's kind of why I started the brand, and it's been going very well. We have distributors now in Taiwan and Hong Kong now. So we're catered to
Oh,
the
very
Asian
cool.
market. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you touched on this earlier, but I mean, I'd love to hear it again. I
Mm.
mean, talking about kind of sharing that stoke nationwide where you are. You just touched that there's races every weekend now from May to October,
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think
and
I prefaced the question with how I think we were talking about the history of you paddling, but you returned to Japan and started paddling, but you took it to the next level. You're avidly putting together races and participation, and you're bringing people to Hawaii to race, and from Japan. So you're building
Yeah.
crews, traveling crews. You're building international recognition, which is what drew all of us into the kind of
Mm.
this conversation. So yeah, so to finish, not to cut in on Joe, but to kind of give a preface to what Joe was asking.
Mm. So
um,
I think,
oh, sorry.
yeah, go for it. Go for it.
Well, yeah, you were talking about, we wanted to kind of tap into or kind of have you touch on, you know, your roots, but how you brought in, the Japanese traditions, but
Mm.
also the Hawaiian influence on it. You know, like from what I've seen, you know, you guys, I forget what was the first, was it Shonan Outrigger? Was that one of the first
Hmm.
teams, big
Yeah,
teams in Japan?
yeah, they're the
Yeah,
biggest
red
club.
and
Yeah,
okay. Are they? Would you
yeah,
say they're one of like the first teams?
yeah. They're the I think
Okay.
they're the first club. Yeah, in Japan.
Okay. Yeah, I remember. I have memories of them. Just you know, us and you know, I used to paddle with San Francisco Outrigger, and we used to
Mm,
battle with you guys going across the channel, and
okay.
and it even just kind of you know saying hi afterwards, you know, and as someone you know growing up in Hawaii, you know, surrounded by Japanese tourism, you know, like
Yeah,
I see the connection there, but I'd love for you to elaborate on that.
yeah. So it's kind of a very wide question. Um,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah, it's a
think
loaded one.
Actually,
yeah.
oh yeah, go ahead, go ahead. Yeah,
If you,
go ahead.
I mean, I can keep talking for days, but if you want to, you know, narrow it down a little bit, then maybe because
Well,
yeah,
okay, so yeah, we can narrow it down a little bit. I know your father Kenzo paddled with Newport Outrigger here,
yeah,
and this before you started paddling, and he paddled under Uncle Thomas Kalama, Uncle Tubby, as everybody knows him, who has passed away. I paddled for Uncle Tubby and coached under Uncle Tubby, and then ended up running Newport Outrigger. So the story about your father and you, I know through paddlers that are paddle for me still. So Tim Ono is one that paddled with your dad,
mm-hmm.
Uncle Bert, and a whole bunch
Mm,
of guys that have been around a long time that paddle that still paddle for us or paddle for me, and I'm fortunate enough to know them and hear their stories. I know your father has taken a lot of Hawaiiana into Japan, and you have since Japan is a culture that embraces that culture. Obviously, there's a
yeah,
lot of
yeah.
tourism back and forth and things like that. So I don't know if I narrowed that down enough, but I
No,
was just
no.
kind
I
of
mean,
plugging a
so
little bit.
I think you know, just you know, kind of the background was my dad paddled at Newport Outrigger when we lived in Irvine. We lived there for 10 years until I was, I think, a senior in high school. But he got really into it, I think, for the last 4 or 5 years that we were there. And I think his introduction was had, you know, like the cultural aspect to it. And when we moved back to Japan, Hokulea came to Japan, and he kind of got involved, you know, with taking care of, you know, the crew and stuff when they got into
What
Japan.
year was that?
I think 2009. It
Oh, okay.
was, yeah, it was, I think it was their first voyage to Japan. And he kind of, because he, so I think a lot of people in Japan get, you know, don't have a connection with the outside world because, as you know, like Japanese people are not very proficient in English, right? Like you would see tourists in Japan that just can't communicate, you know? And when my dad came in, because he could speak English and he had the outrigger background, when Hokulea came, he kind of took care of the crew and stuff. And he got like a big influence from, you know, the crew of Hokulea. And he felt like he needed to perpetuate that culture in Japan and started our Outrigger Canoe Club. So that's, you know,
Very
he
cool.
never got
Okay.
into it as like a
Mhm.
sport, you know, trying to be an athlete
Mm-hmm.
or like, you know, doing well in a race or something. So that's kind of been the, you know, the like the core of how he wanted to grow the sport here. And I've always watched that. So even though I am an athlete, there is still a part of me that tries to do it the traditional way when we go
Mhm.
out on the water and stuff, you know. And I think now our club does a lot of, you know, the Hawaiian chants, you know, in the morning sessions, and we do a pule every time we go out on practice. And I know a lot of clubs, you know, when you start paddling, you go like paddles up, hit, but we still say like homa kakao, you know, even like
Yeah.
before, still do that, you know.
Right.
And And when I was young, I kind of felt embarrassed about it when we
Mm-hmm.
would go to Hawaii for Molokai Hawaiian stuff because nobody's doing it.
Mm-mm.
Nobody, like, we were at the start of our first Molokai Hoi, and like, nobody's doing any of that, but our little Japanese crew is doing Eala A, like, at Haleolono. And I was out back then, when I was like early 20s, I was embarrassed, but now it's like, I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh, that's
And
respect. I mean,
I yeah, I think that is, and we do that because I think the Japanese culture is very similar to the traditional Hawaiian culture. Respect for nature. Our shrines are all connected to the ocean, the mountain, and nature.
mm-hmm,
And I think that's why everyone's really drawn to that cultural aspect. So
mm-hmm,
you'll see a lot of paddlers join paddling because they love the Hawaiian culture. They love hula and stuff. It's not like they not many people do it because it's a sport, you know? Um,
Hmm.
but I think with Va Japan, we're growing it as a sport. So I think it's really important to have both sides. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like you definitely have that, kind of shifting gears to the VA Japan National Championships. I know that, even before the race, the night before, there's a big paina, right? Like,
Yeah.
I was talking to Hisano, and I mean, even just things like that, right? That
Yeah.
keeps traditions alive, and the fact that you're finding the balance between competition and tradition. It's
Yeah.
uh, it's it's very refreshing to hear.
And
Um,
I think that's super important because for community building, and I think I paddle because I want to meet people like me, or
yeah,
just for the connection. And I think that's what paddling is all about, and that's what outrigger canoe paddling is all about. And we have that. It's hard to think, like, in stand up there would never be a pre-race dinner where all the athletes get together, drink
no.
beers, and eat. It's like,
Yep.
yeah.
it's a sport, but I think in outrigger you can do that.
Well, and it's also an individual sport too, right? Stand up paddling is,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
and I mean, you could
But
say
even
canoe
this,
paddling is too, but it's at its essence, it's a team sport, right? It's a
Exactly.
voyage. So
Exactly.
but even this race, you guys are going to have a paina before a one man
Mm-hmm.
race or whatever else, and it is an individual race. I think it's just, I mean, it's just respect to the culture, right? And I think that it's interesting that I've been told that your dad had just done some voyaging with Uncle Kimakeo,
Yeah.
and I was super stoked about that because Uncle Kimakeo's raced for me in my with I have a Kupuna crew that I put together. He's raced with us for a number of years, and he's a really cool guy. When I heard that, I was like, oh man! And I know he travels through Southeast Asia a lot, and he travel through
Yeah.
Japan and doing all over the stuff, all over the place. But that's he's a special guy, and he's it's pretty cool to hear that he's involved with you guys that way.
Yeah, so he basically has guided my dad through all this,
Hmm.
the cultural aspect and the voyaging and seafaring culture and stuff.
Hmm.
And they just finished a voyage they called Ehoi Pumeke Aloha, which means like paddle for Mother Earth.
Hmm.
And they did a peace voyage from Hiroshima to Nagasaki,
Hmm.
the atomic bomb sites in both places, because it is connected by the water. And I think that is very important. And a lot of people, it's very rural countryside, but they would have like Kimokeo would talk about the culture, and there would be like 50 old ladies and, like old uncles, like coming. They don't know about outrigger canoe paddling, but they're very drawn to it because I think culturally there's such similarities.
Hmm.
Mm.
Well,
that's really
yeah, I
cool.
mean that's amazing. Yeah, it's so
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Do you know any? Are there any Hawaiians out in Japan that you know of that live there?
There's a lot of people from Hawaii in Japan,
Really? Okay.
especially like Okinawa and stuff, you know. I don't think there's many like
How about Samoans? They probably eat all your fish, so you don't want them around anyways.
no, they're probably here for rugby, you
Yeah,
know,
probably. Yeah,
Okay.
because
yeah.
Yeah.
rugby's big here. Yeah, yeah.
Get them
Okay.
off the
But
island as fast as possible. Yeah.
That's good
yeah,
to know.
but
Okay.
yeah.
So the VOD national championships, the
Hmm.
Japanese national championships. Again, I'm still kind of on the fence about coming. I hope May 1st.
Yeah.
That's when I'm going to decide. But so we were chatting. So you mentioned that it's about a 2 hour train ride, like bullet train ride from Tokyo
Yeah.
to Shimoda, right? To Shimoda.
Shimoda, yeah. Shimoda.
Okay. And where is that? Where you live? Where do you
No,
live?
I live, you know, an hour from Tokyo in a
Okay.
place called Hayama, which is close
Hayama. Okay.
to the closest like place that people would know about is Kamakura. Kamakura is kind of
Okay.
like a very tourist spot, ocean, surf town kind of thing, you know.
Okay.
And I'm on like 5 miles from there. But
Okay.
so where we're running the race is an area called Minami Izu. And if you look at the map, it's much further south than where we are in Hayama.
Hmm.
And the ocean is, you know, I think I'm very drawn to the ocean there. It's like big ocean, you know.
Nice. Oh, okay.
Got
Even on flat
swell and.
days, there's a lot. It's kind of like Hawaii where the water's heavy, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like and when I paddle at home here, you know, it's like every stroke is light, but the water is heavy even on flat days over there. So I think to show the sport of outrigger to the paddling community in Japan, it's like the perfect place to have the race because you could never have a SUP race there because the current is too fast, you
Oh,
Too
know.
much,
interesting.
yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
Even when it's flat, the current would run like 4 knots, you know.
Whoa,
Okay.
So,
that's big.
yeah.
So with it being the your guys' big OC1 race, kind of it's
Hmm.
the end of the grand finale, right? If you will,
Yeah.
would you say that this course is the most challenging for Japanese waters as far as your race courses?
Yeah, it's definitely the most challenging water that you can get, you know. Like last year, the day before the race, it was like the wind blew maybe like 20 to 25 and, you know,
Okay.
we had Kai Chong here with his wife Hoku and we did a downwind run and it was epic, you know. He couldn't
Yeah.
believe that the run was that good,
Hmm.
you know. So, the waters can get very rough, but hopefully on race day it's relatively calm, you know, because the skill level of paddlers here, I think, you know, half of them would not be able to finish.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
as a race organizer, right? You have to think about these things, right? Because
Yeah,
aren't
so
you part of the committee that's organizing
no,
too?
I'm the race director. So every
Oh, you're the
time I
race
have
director.
the
Jeez.
so when I'm racing, it's usually, you know, out and back, you know. On the way back, I'm like counting people,
Oh my
like
goodness. Yeah.
or like
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
looking out for people, you know, because I'm like shit, you know. Hopefully, no one's, you know, getting lost. And we there's a point where we go around, which is kind of like, you know, like Makapu
Hmm.
over there, where it can get very rough.
Nice.
So
Okay.
um, there's always going to be something to catch, you know, but hopefully it's not too big. That's kind of my thing. Yeah.
It also sounds like it's definitely. So how far is the race?
So
So
it's
kilometers. I'm gonna try to do the kilometer
we're
to miles
planning on
conversion.
I can map
like
it.
20 kilometers, 20 kilometers.
So
So I
that's
think
like what,
like
12,
15
13
miles
miles?
or 13
15
miles
miles?
maybe. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So we don't want to make it too long because, you know, I
Mm-hmm.
don't think we're
Yeah.
there yet.
But that's the
Yeah.
perfect distance for, international travelers coming in too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
To
Yeah.
come all that way and
it's not a
um
huge race. It's a normal race and a normal. I mean, length for what we train for, but I mean, it's a
yeah.
really cool format. And I was telling Joe earlier. I'd love to have some video clips I can edit in to look at, because
Yeah.
you guys have really, really beautiful backdrops on what you're having.
Oh, yeah.
Your coastline is gorgeous, man. That race is just amazing. It's amazing.
So the coastline in Minami-Izu, where we run the race, is very beautiful, especially out from the ocean, to land. The backdrops is like, it's very close. It looks like an island, like cliffs and big rocks and
big rock outcroppings, really nice, like tight turns on the canoes. It's really cool looking. Yeah,
exactly. So I think if you want to, plan a trip to Tokyo, because the dollar is so strong right now, it's like everything you do here is like 50% off what it would normally be. So if you want to plan a trip, I think this is a race that would be awesome to do, and we usually so when we do this, we make sure that we try and get boats for people, but as you know, OC1 paddling isn't as big as it is in California, so the boat situation can get difficult, but with the help of the Outrigger Zone distribution that we've taken on since last year, it's been a little bit easier, to do.
Yeah, thank you for landing me a canoe for the race. So appreciate
just in
it.
case. Yeah.
Maybe
Well,
if you come, bring the guy that's letting you borrow the canoe one of your hats or something.
Absolutely, I'll bring more than that. Yeah,
I'm actually sending with Tim and Hisano, I think, a half a dozen Broadcast Braddahs hats, and I don't know how many people in Japan actually listen to the channel, but I just told him, I go, take them with you and give them out to the guys and whatnot, so
they would be stoked.
Brad, like,
that's awesome.
Just stoked talking about it, and honestly, it like for Joe and I have talked about this a bunch of times, but we ultimately would love to come down there and film a live race and film it, from a boat, do the live broadcast, and do the whole race front to back. It would be.
We'll help you count paddlers too.
Yeah, we can count them.
Maybe we're a safety boat too for you too.
Yeah, we can mask as a safety crew and do the whole thing, but it's a really, really cool thing. And I think you're talking about how you guys get some really heavy groundswell and you get some real big tides and conditions. The part of the international racing scene that's really cool is that there's a lot of that out there in the world that, we look at Tahiti, we look at Hawaii, and we see all those things. There are plenty of other places in the world that have the similar kind of ocean conditions that will facilitate really fun races. And it's just a matter of kind of, looking at all of the broadening all that up. And I think that as the IDF does their international stuff with the long distance and not so, I mean, the sprints so much don't really talk about, or they don't, because, regattas are regattas. They're great. They have their place, but the long distance stuff shows a lot of like teams coming in from, we saw in Samoa, Joe and I talked about this a bunch of times. I watched Brazil, Brazil's just working their way up into a weird top category. But out of nowhere, Chile comes out with a team that placed it with the Masters crew. And you think about the kind of water conditions they got to paddle in order to be comfortable in what they were doing in Samoa. There's things all over the world that we haven't seen. And part of Joe and I's, kind of bigger goal and desire is like to kind of show all of that to everybody. It's pretty cool,
Yeah, and I think paddling, outrigger paddling, in 10 years will really be like a global sport, because it's there's so many places around the world that you can paddle. I've been to SUP races and I wish I had my one man, because on a SUP, when the ocean gets rough, it's really hard to do out and backs or, explore the coastline. But if I had a one man, it's like, you could really check it out,
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's
And
kind of interesting, right? Like the stand up world, they really aggressively progress the design of the board, right?
For
To
sure.
where they made them faster,
Yeah,
but they also made them less stable. So now they're basically turning
exactly.
into surf skis that you stand on.
right
And
Exactly.
so
Exactly.
so
for
it makes
speed.
sense why, yeah, they're built for speed.
Hmm.
It's kind of turning into like Indy car racing, and it also makes sense
Yeah.
why it's big in Europe, in
Mm,
these kind of lake and river kind of conditioned, very controlled environment courses.
Well, brother, like
mm,
you see some of the Eastern Europeans that are landlocked, right? And they're
yeah.
doing, K1 and all that kind of stuff. They translate into the canoe really well. And
Yeah.
so I think you
Well,
see
because they go
this.
way faster in the canoe.
Well,
Mm,
but I mean, but you see this kind of like transition of a lot of people looking at a lot of different things, opportunities, right, for themselves. And there is, I mean, even landlocked countries that are performing with, as long as they have a lake, right? They
yeah.
Hmm.
can they can
Well, that's
train.
what Kenny was touching on earlier, right? Like a lot of the stand-up crowd is jumping on OC1s.
Right.
And you
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
take a place like Japan that is surrounded by coastline, but with a good amount of lakes in between. It's taking off.
Yeah. So I
Um,
think it's every time, so we do with my SUP brand, we do a lot of demo days, because we have 30, like maybe close to 30 shops that carry our boards. So we'll travel around
nice.
Japan with, our SUPs, but I always make sure I take one man now. And when I get people on it, it's like they can't believe how fun it is.
Right, right. Because
Yeah,
it's
that's
you
cool.
get more
Yeah,
benefit for the effort, right? So if you're on a
exactly.
sup and you're moving, the stroke rates or whatever, you get in an
Yeah,
OC1, you do the same thing. You're traveling, a good
exactly.
distance faster. Yeah,
Well, it's just easier on your body,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
That too is less impact. Yeah.
Yeah, I paddle SUP when I want to get really fit, you
Well,
know?
you
Yep.
guys,
Like,
you're an athlete, right?
yeah,
For the
but
everyday
I
user,
don't,
it's like, oh, I can go this fast in a OC1. Like I'm going to do this.
yeah, I don't go cruise on a race board SUP.
Right,
No.
Like,
right.
Yeah.
because you can't just stand there. It's very
You got to keep
difficult.
moving. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's like a surf ski standing up. You need the paddle in the water to make the thing go.
But I think it's the best way to introduce people into paddling on the water because
Oh,
it's
you think
very
stand up is?
accessible. It's very accessible.
Yeah, and
It's
you can
very
see,
convenient.
right? You're
Yeah,
taller, you can see what's going on more.
exactly. And I see a lot of people that have been racing SUPs for like 5, 6 years that are kind of getting burnt out jumping onto the OC
Hmm.
ones.
Hmm.
Yeah,
We're
because
kind of we're kind of seeing that here too in California. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I've noticed, like with Danny and his crowd, it's like when I used to go 2000 like 15, 16, there was a lot of people paddling stand up, but now they're all on like OC ones,
Yeah.
or paddle
Yep.
bands. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting to that market was really really hot for a little bit of time, and then it's kind of like at least here in the United States, kind of just softened out a little bit, and I think the money's kind of moved around. So that was probably
Yeah.
the desire for Santa paddleboard, and was there was money involved, and there was you could win money and do all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff, and it's kind of just settled down a little bit. So you see it moving around. You see guys changing disciplines, going into outrigger canoe paddling or something
Hmm.
else. Hmm.
I think there's the thing that happened with stand up was, it's a lot of the brands' fault, like the big European brands and stuff. They wanted
Hmm.
to make sure the boards are faster, lighter, which
Yeah.
meant narrower, and they just kept making it
It was
harder and
like
harder
Apple.
for people to do.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
And
They
they'd come
just
out with
kept.
a new board every year, like
Yeah.
just keep coming
Yeah.
in. People can't keep up with that.
Just like
hmm,
Apple. They make the new
Yeah,
iPhone every year, right? And it's like,
exactly.
okay, the camera's better, the battery's better. Buy it. You gotta buy it. Oh, by the way, it's
Yeah.
this much. right?
Yeah, but the
Exactly.
alternative is, Bretta, is that you could be an android like me and not figure out how to confirm a recording. I mean, that could
Yeah.
happen too. So,
Yeah, that too. It's good thing.
yeah,
It's a good thing you don't use the stand up.
yeah.
Exactly.
So, Kenny, something as we're getting towards the end here, that's important for everybody is that anybody that's interested in coming to Japan to paddle,
Yeah.
how do they get a hold of you? I put up some links and stuff like that, but
Yeah.
it's good to say the links and all that other kind of stuff. Like, how can we get a hold of you?
I think if they want to, some guidance on where they want to paddle, they can always send me a DM on Instagram or our paddler shop Instagram, and we'll kind of guide you through it. If you're coming to this area, we can get you on a 1-man, a 6-man, a stand-up, But if you're going, elsewhere, I can always connect you to somebody.
And
Yeah.
what's your Instagram handle?
Right. It's Kenny Kaneko, I think. Just Kenny
Okay.
Kaneko. I
You
think.
got to hold the O at the end. Ooh.
Long
No,
bunch of
I
O's.
was.
Yeah.
It's Kenny underbar Kaneko. Yeah,
Okay.
I was
Okay.
trying to think about what it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, so besides your father, do you speak to anyone else in English in Japan? You mentioned that
Yeah.
English isn't as proficient.
I have a
Um,
couple friends, but my English gets rusty year after year after year because I don't
okay.
really get to use it.
Yeah.
When I was racing stand up
Bro,
around the
your
world.
English is really good.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so,
Hey,
man.
there are
Yeah.
times when I'm talking to Uncle Kimukeo and I'm like, what did you say? Like he's just like
Yeah.
broken up all over the place, pigeon. But yeah, no, your English is great. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Well,
Yeah, I
when it
still
sounds
try
like
and keep it up.
this is good practice for you because you're heading. You said you're heading to Hawaii, right, on Saturday
Yeah.
for the solo. And
Yes.
so, of course, a lot of English there, or kind of broken English there,
Yeah,
but
so
You've been around it enough, yeah.
there's five guys going from Japan or 6 guys
wow,
including me coming from Japan.
Really? No way.
And I think I gotta translate for everybody.
That's okay. But
Yeah.
they're gonna
that's
go
cool.
and they're gonna go and cross the Kaiwi.
Yeah,
Oh
they're
man.
crossing the Kaiwi. We've got I think 3 guys in their 20s.
That's awesome.
And one
Congratulations, Kenny.
guy.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
Yeah,
yeah. So I've had, but it's awesome to get them out to see the world, because then, they can take it back to their clubs or their friends and, the circle gets bigger and bigger. And that's what it's, I think, all about, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I know, and I know you train them hard because I'm thinking back to one of my solo crossings. His name's escaping me, but China Walls. It's
hmm
right at China Walls, like mile 30. The race is 32 miles,
yeah.
and there's no waves. You can't ride, and there was no wave coming at China Walls, so I had no help. And I just see this Japanese Brada, just going right by me on like a green. I think he was on like a kahekai or something like that, and he just like walks
Okay.
by me. I'm like brain damaged. I'm like, I think I trained for 30 miles of the
How
32
is this
miles.
happening?
Yeah, like right when you hit the point, it's just upwind,
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
just see this is just relentless Japanese guy, just young guy, just going right by me. I was like,
yeah,
look at him, like, oh, you know what, Brad, you deserve it. Like, good for you, man.
yeah. I
I,
think
I I
he's doing
I
it
wish I
again
knew who
this
that
year.
was.
I
Okay,
think he's gonna do it again. I think his name is Utah, but I think
okay.
he'll do it this year.
Right on. Well, shout out to Utah if that's you, man. Like, yeah, that's like, right. The way he passed me, I was like, man, oh,
Yeah, you
brain
gotta
damage.
give respect where it's due, Bretta. You gotta
I
do
want to
it.
say that was like 20, I don't know, 17, 18 maybe or something like that. I
Yeah, it
forget.
must have been him because he would have been the only one doing it.
At that
Okay.
time, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, at that time.
Um,
But when it gets to
cool.
that upwind, that's kind of our conditions that we train in.
You
Yeah.
you
So,
train in heavy water, yeah.
no, where we live, like can get heavy, but a lot of times it's like straight offshore.
Oh, okay.
So
Mm.
ducks going any direct. It's straight offshore, like 20 miles per hour.
Oh
Well,
man.
I used to train in the bay. This is back when I used to train in the bay, so I didn't have any excuses. I trained in a lot of upwind, but yeah, the
Yeah.
way he just dropped me going upwind was like, oh.
That would be like the worst Santa Ana conditions on a loop day, Joe. That's what he's
Mm,
saying.
yeah.
Just heavy
Yeah.
offshore,
Oh yeah.
nasty. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
it's cold,
Hot.
it's like,
And it's cold. Yeah,
yeah.
you guys,
Well,
where you guys paddling is
yeah.
cold water, yeah?
Yeah, in the winter, trying to train for the solo sucks, because in the winter it gets very, very cold, Water's like 13, 14 degrees and
Celsius. So
Celsius.
yeah,
that's like
Celsius. Yeah.
56. That's probably like 60
Yeah,
Fahrenheit,
I think
maybe.
60,
I don't
60
know. I'm
maybe.
totally guessing that one, but
And air temp is like 50, 55,
yeah.
Yeah, you're dealing with that,
Yeah,
yeah.
So
exactly.
do you guys so going to Hawaii is like a major like climate change for you guys too, like
Huge,
humidity,
yeah.
right?
Yeah,
So it makes sense why you're going this weekend to acclimate. That's
exactly.
smart,
I think
right?
just to get used to the water. And
Yeah.
right now it's, training's tapering down, so it's just
Yep.
getting used to the conditions,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and the
Do you
heat.
do that every year? Because you do pretty well for the solo
Yeah.
I
consistently.
How many times have you
so
crossed the Kahivi Channel?
I between SUP, 6-man and 1-man, maybe like 10, 11 times maybe.
A good amount,
But
yeah.
for last year I did the solo, and the year before the solo I did before that was in 2015. So it was like
Hmm.
I was
Oh,
away
it's
from
okay.
OC1 paddling because I
That
was
was my
doing
first
SUP.
solo, 2015. Yeah, I remember
15
that
was your
Mm.
year.
first, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, last year I think I got like 24th maybe. So
Yeah.
hopefully I break top 20 this year. The field is so deep right now that,
So deep. Yeah. The
yeah, I
kids, man, I'm
was,
telling you, the juniors,
yeah,
watch
I
We
out,
was
just saw
man.
him.
talking.
We just saw him at Wild Buffalo here in for the Catalina Crossing, and they were dangerous, man. Dangerous
Yeah,
kids.
I
Yeah.
was paddling, I was racing Wyatt across the channel the whole time.
Yeah,
And when
yeah.
it got to the
Yeah.
upwind, I got him. But,
Oh,
it's,
nice. Okay.
it's
Horsepower.
a,
It's all horsepower.
it's going to be a tough one, I think.
Hmm.
But excited to get over there. It looks like it might be windy, so
Okay.
yeah,
That's awesome.
excited for that, for
Right on.
sure. Yeah.
You know what's great. What it sounds like is it's cool to hear that you have these five other paddlers coming with you. But I like back to that balance that we're talking about. Like you're you're pushing the you're pushing the performance side of things, but you're also
Mm-hmm.
keeping the tradition. And I think
Honoring the tradition.
you're
Yep.
honoring the tradition, and
Yep.
that's
That's a
that's
really
pretty
important
rare.
balance.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
so we salute you for doing that, man.
Yeah,
That's
100%.
and directing races and running a paddle shop, and so that's why
Yeah.
we're really happy that you jumped on with us.
Yeah,
I think
This
it's
is
kind of important to give back. It's
yeah.
like giving back to the sport that's given me basically everything I have now. It's like I think that's important. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good
and
way
So
to put it.
you have. I mean, not to get in your personal life, but you have a couple daughters. You said, or I think
I
I
have two
heard.
daughters, one in elementary school and one that's 4.
Oh,
Yeah.
young.
Yeah, young ones.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got one that's she keeps running back and forth back here, and I keep telling her to stop, but she is not going to listen. She went hard
it's
headed
it's
Samoan, that's for sure.
it's crazy she's not on your lap. If my daughter was here, she'd be all over
Yeah,
the camera.
yeah.
Yeah.
She wants to be. That's why she keeps bouncing back and forth because she just wants to have the attention a little bit, right? But yeah,
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, that's really cool. So, couple daughters, are they into paddling too, or not yet, or
No, or actually my elementary school daughter like started so we have like a keiki program at our club from
cool?
first grade to 6th grade, and she's
Hmm.
joined this year. So it gives me a reason to go steer the kids canoe and stuff, coach. Yeah.
Yep.
Nothing better to do. It's better than standing on a soccer field watching your kid play soccer or something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah.
think that I mean, obviously, I know you played soccer, for a long time. I think at a pretty high
Yeah.
level as a young man, but
Yeah.
um, the paddling world and sharing especially like when you have guys, your dad's connected into a lot of guys that have a lot of right? So, it's like sharing that with the youth is super important, and I had my niece out on Sunday, and we took her out in a 6-man canoe, and having her, she's 4 years old,
Wow.
paddling with us, and she wasn't paddling, she's sitting in 5 just playing with the water and doing all her
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
but exposing, and then my daughter's 7 and getting her out there when we can, and I have a couple stepsons that are a little bit older and they love paddling and doing that kind of stuff. So it's just one of those things that you got to share, and if you
Yeah.
don't, it's gonna go away. It's a sad thing, but
Exactly.
it's the truth. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it even when, the kids that are doing it now, when they get into high school, they go away from it, like
hmm
Yeah.
it's like this
We have it
experience
here.
when
We
they're
have it here
young.
because there's no money in it. There's no college scholarships in it. Like, so we have a weird demographic here. So if you look at paddling for us, kids get into it and then it drops off because they go to college and they're gonna do something else, and then they don't come back until they're in their 30s maybe,
Mm,
and then you have this huge increase of paddling like population from 30 to 60. It's just like
yeah.
astronomically growing, and it's just
Yeah.
because they come back, but we have that pressure to make a living and have a family, and then provide and do that kind of stuff, and
I think
it's a
it's more like 40 to 60. I feel like even
you're
Mm.
30
probably right.
something
You're probably
there's not
right.
a lot of
Yep.
30,
Yep.
30
Because
year olds
life
that
gets
Joe
busy.
Joe's at the end of that age bracket.
Yeah, so I have like 6 years of experience in the 30s to tell you that, like, yeah, there's not a
Yeah.
lot of 30 something
Yeah.
year olds that are
There's
paddling.
not. Joe's in the
So
middle of
Joe,
that whole deal, and there's not a lot of mid 30-year-old guys that are paddling at a high
wow.
level. It's
Really?
mostly, yeah,
just in general.
yeah. You
Huh.
get this big gap between 20 and 40ish, where there's no one there except
But
handful of
Wow.
people.
but I think
And
it's
40
part of
40 to 50 to 60 is a big growth group.
Mm.
but I think part of that reason is exactly what Kenny was talking about, where paddling in Japan is an activity. It's a family. It's a gathering, right? Like how
Yeah.
it is in Hawaii, where here
Yeah,
it's
I
just
agree
it kind of
100%.
became a sport, and
It's a cultural
and
thing. Yeah.
yeah, and you kind of learn like, oh well, okay, it's a
hmm
sport. Well, how much time do I have to commit? Oh, ooh, I gotta commit that much. I mean, I go through that
Yeah.
struggle constantly. Like especially the older I get. It's like, ooh,
Yeah.
A lot
you
of
know
people
what?
here, it's a weekend pastime, right? It's just like, oh, okay,
Yeah,
we're gonna go
Yeah.
race today, and we might train a little bit in the week, but it's not much, and
yeah.
it's different. Yep.
So it's
Yeah.
it's pretty cool to hear that you instill both ends.
Yeah, I
You know.
agree. I
Yeah.
agree, and it's super important, and I think it's a really cool thing to hear.
Yeah, definitely.
Mhm. In Samoa, we just use the canoe as transportation. That's it. We don't race. We don't. So our families, and the generations that come from that are different. We look at it in a
Yeah.
different way. It's part of getting around the island. And that's
Yeah.
it.
But they're
But
on the water every day.
yeah,
Wow.
my grandma used to make bootleg beer, and they couldn't transport it by road because it's illegal. It was illegal at that time, and I think it still is illegal today because Vailima in Samoa is a national beer. So I think there are a couple that have figured their way out. But anyways, a long, long time ago, she used to brew her own beer. So my uncles and my dad would take a canoe and paddle the canoe with the beer to another village and go sell it to another village, and then paddle the canoe back because there were no police officers in the water, so that's what they used it for. And then
Wow.
and then they moved to the Hawaii to Laie, and they helped build the PCC, and there was that whole deal. And then my dad was out of canoe paddling stuff until I started it again when I was, I don't know, I think it was 2000 ish, right around there. Then I got him a
Mm.
canoe. I had him buy a one man, and we paddled together, and then we got into anyways. It's just kind of a weird big circle for him, and paddling ended up just like you. Paddling ended up taking 100% of his time. That man surfed 4 times a day, or 4 times. Sorry, 4 times a week. He would drive and surf, drive and surf, drive and surf, and he would get crappy conditions, crappy, crowds. And then when I introduced him to paddling again, he goes, it was like he'd take a canoe and a surfboard, and if the surf wasn't right and there was too crowded or whatever happened, he would just drive somewhere, launch his canoe, and just paddle, and
Yeah.
it itches the same or scratches the same itch, right, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up surfing in Newport Beach, like when I was in middle school and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But with paddling, there's never like shitty conditions. It's like
Yeah.
The
it's
more
always
windy, the
fun.
better. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
Glassy is fun too.
yep.
It's like
Mm-hmm.
yeah. With surfing, there's like it's either really good or it's too crowded or it's shitty. So
Right.
that's why I like paddling. Yeah.
So you I don't know if it was on our previous recording or if it was on this one, but you mentioned that when you're you kind of dabbled with paddling as a kid here in
Yeah.
California, but it wasn't as cool to you.
Yeah.
You did mostly surfing and soccer.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
when so it sounds like you moved to Japan your senior year of high school.
Yeah.
Can you think back to the turning point for you? Was it where you were, the surf wasn't as good, or was it how
Good
did you
question.
kind of
Yep.
change the outlook on paddling? Like what was that moment like?
The
So
shift. The
I
shift.
so I think I grew up in Irvine, and I moved back to Japan to play professional soccer. And
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
I
Yeah.
got a contract with like a J League club here, and I went back to play my senior year. But I got injured the first three
Mm.
months, ACL, and I was culture shocked when I moved back to Japan. Just the
Wow. Yeah.
trains and the Tokyo, the city is very cold. It can be very cold, like as in not like temperature cold, but it can be a very lonely place.
Mm-hmm. People
And
are
I was
very
lost.
kind of
People knew
focused.
people knew you were American.
Yeah, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But I look Japanese, and then we
Right.
lived near the ocean where it's like a surf town, but I'd go surfing, the waves would suck, and then even the surfing vibe is very different here, Like over
Mm-hmm.
in the US, you don't have a watch on and you ask the guy next to you, like, hey, what time is it right now? And they smile and tell you back. But when I would do that to other surfers in Japan, they would look at me weird and stuff. And I was kind of over surfing too, and my whole career or my whole life, I was trying to become a pro, and I was on the verge of giving that up. And my dad had a old two-man, I think it was a John Martin,
Oh
and
yeah.
he was
Mm-hmm.
like, "Yeah, we should go paddle," and he took me out on like an onshore day, like couple miles out, and then we surfed back, and I was like, fuck, like how fun is this?
Yeah.
And I
Mm-hmm.
was
Yeah.
Okay.
and that's kind of what got me hooked to paddling.
Yeah.
And how
Yeah.
old are
Mm-hmm.
you? What was your age at? Were you like
I
right out of
was
high school?
No, so that was my first year in college, because
Okay.
after I gave up my soccer career, I went to university in Japan and kind of just partied for a year. And I was like, kind of, what
Took
am
a
I doing
break.
with my life,
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. And then I found paddling. So I think I was 19, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then that year, my dad took us to Kona. We actually paddled in a. So me and I mentioned in I think the last podcast, Alex Epling
Yep.
and
Yeah.
Yeah.
one other friend I started paddling with. We paddled in a koa canoe at Kona with three guys from Newport Canoe Club. I don't remember them. It was like a father and a son, like a very kind of big, stocky son. And he like couldn't stop paddling maybe halfway through the race because of heat stroke. And it was like the worst experience racing. You
Yeah.
know, we're
Yeah.
like third
Oh, I'll
from
find out who that is.
last.
Trust me, I'll tell you soon enough.
Yeah, we were third from last, but the next day, but then at the party, you know, I saw everyone having fun, such a good time, and I was like, wow, it's not about like winning or losing, you know. This is
Yeah.
pretty awesome.
But
And then
winning's pretty fun too, though.
yeah,
Yeah.
but and then the next day there was the one man race. And then I would see guys like athletes paddling. I was like, wow, it's actually a sport, you know?
Yeah.
And then it's kind of, I wanted to try and, you know, try and prove myself in a sport because I kind of had to give up on it through soccer. So that was kind of my introduction into trying to be like an athlete paddling one mans and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's very cool. Yeah, you definitely
Yeah.
created your own, you know, which is awesome to
Mm,
hear.
Yeah.
Um,
yeah.
right on. Well, shoot,
Yeah.
we learned so much about, you know, paddling in Japan
Yeah.
and your
Well, and about
upcoming.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, and the the races that you're organizing, especially the big one that's coming up in the
Hmm.
middle of May, and
Yeah.
yeah, we can't thank you enough for your time and just what you're doing with the sport. You know, you're truly perpetuating the sport, and we
Yeah.
love
Which is,
to talk
yeah.
to people that are just making a tremendous impact, right,
Mm.
on and off the water. So we can't thank you enough for doing that and being
Yeah.
a solid representation. So
And I hope to have an opportunity maybe next year to come there together, like Joe and I together, and broadcast a race and kind of bring it live to the world. You know, it's like that's kind of our, I don't know. I mean, that's my idea of
Yeah.
paddling tends to morph into new things, and for
Hmm.
me, you know, I mean, having raced and then coached and run a club and still running the club and still paddling, and then it's like the next thing is doing the next level, which is trying, bringing it to the world. So
Yeah.
I hope that we have the opportunity to do that next year, and hopefully we can connect on that. And I'm really excited
Definitely.
about it.
Joe, let me know if you're coming by May
yeah, I
1st.
will. Yes,
And
By May
yes.
1st,
Yeah,
yeah,
thank you
yeah, yeah.
again for being
registration's
flexible
closed,
there,
Joe.
and
Yeah,
shout out to that person that's letting me borrow
yeah.
their Volare.
And
Really
Kenny, I
appreciate
Yeah.
it.
thank you enough for helping take care of Timono and Hisano Sato Tassin. I think that I think for anybody that's going to Japan that's watching this episode, you guys just got to reach out to Kenny. I mean, he's the guy, and he will help navigate you through whatever you need and help you accomplish your paddling goals in Japan. Japan is a beautiful country and has a lot
Hmm.
to offer, and everyone should go there and paddle. That's basically what we're getting to, right?
Yeah. Thank you guys for, you know, giving me the platform to get the word out about Japan, you know.
Hey, and you know what, brother? Anytime you got something you want to talk about, you bring it to us, and we will give you whatever platform you need. We would
Yeah,
love to talk to you again about the future and new races, or helping support a new club, and maybe getting canoes there and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. Like for us, it's a medium. Like Joe and I think talk about ourselves as a medium between a lot of people and combining a community, and that's kind of what we like to do.
Yeah, I'd love to, you know, try and bring a crew for Catalina or, you know, even a couple
Oh,
guys out for
yeah.
one of the V1 races or those C1 races, you know. So I'll
Well, if you
definitely get
need
in touch.
canoes for that, let me know. We got plenty of connections for that, and we can figure all that out. It's easy to do.
Thank you.
yeah, and best of luck with the solo
Yeah,
and the
man.
rest of the training
Yeah.
and organizing the big national championship. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
Stoked to
thank you
see you
guys so
finish top
much.
20, brother. Stoked to see you finish top 20 in the solo.
Hopefully
Yeah.
that's my goal for the year. Yeah.
Yeah.
that's awesome.
That's a
Yeah,
good
we hope you
goal.
get it.
There's a
Yeah,
big
yeah.
field there's a big field going this year.
Yeah, I know, but I've always wanted to break 4 hours, and I think if I break 4 hours, it puts me somewhere around there. So
Yeah.
Nice.
it's not a race against someone or for places, but it's like if I get under 4 hours, then I should be
Yeah.
around there. Yeah.
Can you imagine if
Well,
there's like 30 guys under 4 hours? That would just be insane.
Yeah,
it'd be the biggest day
that's
And I
across the
and
channel
I
exciting.
and
ever.
I wouldn't be surprised
That's
Yeah.
if that
exciting
happened
though,
sooner.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
so
yeah,
It'd
exciting,
be a good day.
you
It'd be
know,
a big day across the channel with a lot of highlights for sure.
for
yeah.
But
sure.
Kenny, proud to see what you're doing in Japan and with the sport, perpetuating the
Mm.
sport, perpetuating the culture in the sport, and thank you very much for doing all that stuff, and thank you for your time. We've been an hour on. We had 20 minutes of time that we didn't record, but I appreciate you re going
Yeah,
through that
man.
whole thing again, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, guys, we're
See
gonna
you
end this.
guys. Good night.
Thanks to the Broadcast
Thanks,
Brothers. Thanks
Kenny.
to Kenny
Cheers.
Kaneko. And
Yeah.
Thank you.
cheers, brothers.
Aloha.
Thank you guys so much. Aloha.
Hui hou.
You.